3, 2, 1, going live.
Hi, everybody. Garrett Reisman, your co-host on Two Funny Astronauts.
And I am Mike Massimino. I was just checking. We're supposed to be going out. And Jason, I'm going to introduce Jason Noer, our engineer and producer. Jason, is this going out on Twitter right now? Because I'm looking at my Twitter, don't see it.
It's not going out on Twitter right now, but we can go and push that link over to Twitter. And if anyone's watching right now and wants to share it on their Twitter, I appreciate that too. All right.
So we're not going out on Twitter.
We are currently not going out, but we're going.
So we lied to people. We started off
a little bit. I couldn't get.
We get prosecuted for this? Are we gonna?
Yeah. There's going to be a hearing.
Is that an FCC violation?
That could be a problem. Jason, if you want to get on my Twitter and straighten it out, that would be great. And Garrett and I can start talking. But what we're doing today, folks, is something a little different. We were going to kind of publish one of our standard episodes. Not that they're ever standard, but one of our pre-recorded ones. But we, both Garrett and I, did some media hits over the last few days because Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson trying to get into space, and Richard Branson got into space.
Kind of.
We'll talk about that with a bunch of other astronauts, and we'll talk about that too, people. And Garrett, anyway, will be very truthful in how he thinks. But we did a bunch of interviews, and Garrett and I were thinking we should probably. I'll be truthful too. But Garrett and I were thinking that there was so much interest. Every once in a while, I would, every just once in a while, every few months, or sometimes longer, sometimes shorter, some sort of space-related story hits, and the phone starts ringing for us that people want to talk about it. Well, on CNN or NBC or wherever, all the different networks and so on. And that's what happened with Branson getting into space. So what we're doing is a special broadcast live. So this is live, folks, if it's not obvious.
In case you couldn't tell.
In case you can't really tell.
This live stuff scares me, Mass, because, I might say something. And we have no chance to edit it, right? So I might just blurt something out and regret it immediately.
No, people will understand. No, people will understand. Jason, by the way, is coming to us. You hear some background noise. He's in a bar, for Pete's sake. So that's why we're hearing that background chatter. But yeah, Garrett, we should be concerned, so we'll be careful. But when we were in space and we were talking, everything was being sent down to the Earth, and people could listen if they wanted to. The 3 or 4 people that were watching us when we were in space, we had to watch what we were saying too. So this is true. Kind of like
when you're up there, there's nothing that they can do about it. What are they going to do? They're going to come up and tell you you're fired? Or what
they will fire you if you said the wrong thing. Yes, they might not. They're not going to come up and get you. But when you got back, you would be fired. That's what I think would certainly happen if you said something. And it's been I don't know. That's a whole nother topic, maybe.
This is a whole nother topic. But just really quickly.
Oh gosh.
There are people at NASA that censor. This is going to get us into trouble, but there are people at NASA that censor all the video and audio that comes down. They have a small delay, and they can hit a button.
Yes.
If you drop an F-bomb or just say so, they can actually cut it out and save you. And so they review, and Marcia Ivins, remember Marcia used to sit there and look at all this stuff to make sure also that inadvertently that nobody floats by the camera naked, something horrible like that. And
wait, go back to that. How many people are naked in the ISS at any given time? Then
that's another episode.
That's another topic, Jason.
But just to wrap this segue up, or this tangent up, I could tell you that so when I got back, they gave me a trophy. They have an F-bomb trophy. It's a little hand grenade with an F on it. They call it the F-bomb trophy. Yeah. The people there that do the editing. And I got it for having the most during my time in space, which was not the longest. I didn't set any records, but I had the most. One of my spaceflight records is that I had the most number of F-bombs that they had to edit out. And
Wow.
Tonto Reed Reisman almost beat me, but I was told that that I managed to keep my crown by like just a few.
Nice.
Well, there you go. Another one for NASA's record book. Garrett Reisman.
Legendary.
Congratulations on that one. All right. Okay. So we try to since this is live and we're eating up time here. We're using daylight. How about we start talking about this Richard Branson in space, Garrett? What did you? What was your impressions of what happened on Sunday? The build up to it, maybe, or what the aftermath? What did you, in general? How are you feeling about this whole thing?
I'm feeling good in general. I'm feeling good about it. I'm feeling positive about it because I do think it's great that more people will have a chance to go up and see the Earth from that altitude, and float around in weightlessness and just have that whole experience. I think we've been waiting a long time. This has been something that we thought would happen. I forgot exactly when they started selling tickets, but I know it's been like over 10 years that they've been selling.
It's been a while, yeah.
And so we expected this to happen, and they had a few problems. They had a fatal accident during one of the test flights that was very tragic.
That set him back about 6 years, I think, with that that accident.
I remember when that, I remember when that happened. I was
October 2014.
Yes, 2014.
Yeah.
And I remember that because I was driving with a bunch of other SpaceX managers, and we're going to meet with some people that were helping us with the spacesuit. And I'm in the back of this guy's Tesla, and I'm updating on the screen of the Tesla. We're updating the news feed because I incorrectly was told that C.J. Sturkow, a friend of ours, was on that flight.
Oy.
And so I thought he might, and we knew that one of the two guys didn't make it. They didn't release the names. I'm thinking my buddy, might no longer be with us, and it was really freaking me out. And we kept refreshing the feed, and it turned out CJ was fine, but somebody was killed, and it was horrible. And that was
another guy was hurt pretty bad. I think another guy got hurt with that. I remember that happened too. I had the same. I wrote to CJ as soon as I heard that. I didn't hear any reports or anything, but I sent him a text, and he, nice of him, came right back and says, "No, Master, it wasn't me, but thanks for checking." I'm sure I wasn't the only guy texting him, but he got back to me pretty quickly. So that was the first thing I went through. My mind is yours too. Like, who do you know that might have been killed? And thankfully it wasn't CJ, but it was someone else. But that happened back in 14. I think they thought they were going to start flying and honoring those tickets for everyone that had purchased them back in 2015, like a year later, because I think they had sold all those tickets already by back then when they had the accident. And it took about I think some 5-6 years, whatever was the delay on that, to make sure they got it right, and they've been successful now.
It's kind of like a graduate student working on his PhD thesis. It's like he's a year away from finishing for 5 years. And, that was kind of how that was going. But then they did it. They actually did it, and it's great. And in less than a week, hopefully it'll happen again with Bezos. So So now it's really upon us, this suborbital, and we'll have to talk about the difference between suborbital and orbital. But this year we're going to have both Virgin Galactic, Blue Origin, and SpaceX send ordinary citizens to non-professional astronauts to space.
Right.
SpaceX is about Bezos hopefully next week. And then SpaceX, by the end of the year, is going to launch Jared Isaacman and his Inspiration 4 crew.
That's right.
We're really going to be off to the races with space tourism and commercial space. I think it's great.
And that one's an orbital. That was an orbital flight. They're going to go to orbit, but they're not going to space station on that one. At first, I thought that's what you were going to mention, because that I think is going to be hopefully the beginning of next year with Mike L.A. and our friend Eitan and some of the other guys. So cool.
This is a question I had for a conversation I had with both of you, right? Which is what are we going to call? So do you guys, what do you call people who, for instance, didn't have to pass through all of the STEM stuff and all the work that you guys have to do to be astronauts? Like, what's that going to be? Are they?
I'll tell you what you call them. You call them rich.
Well, fair.
Filthy rich, stinking filthy rich. So in the beginning,
so they are rich astronauts. We need distinctions, I think. Rich astronauts, government astronauts. But go ahead. Yeah, go, Garrett. This is good. Fly with that one. That's a good one.
There's been criticism, and I think it's justified to a certain extent about the fact that a lot of these people like Branson, Bezos, Elon Musk, they have a lot of money, and even the people that are just buying the ticket on Virgin Galactic, they were selling it originally for $250,000. And then the price goes up from hundreds of thousands of dollars to tens of millions of dollars if you want to go orbital and stay up for a while, not just straight up and straight down the suborbital. And that's a lot of money. So these aren't ordinary. Say, oh, we're opening up space to ordinary people. No, we're not. We're opening up space to a bunch of very, very wealthy people. But the thing to remember is, first of all, count on this. The price is going to come down, okay? And it's just like, in my mind, what happened with the airlines in the very beginning of the airline industry. It was a bunch of really wealthy people that were flying on these early passenger flights,
and
right?
You used to have to dress up. You used to have to dress up on a flight. I remember my parents used to tell me, not that they went flying very much, but
in the early days,
it was a fancy thing.
It was like movie stars and millionaires, and they would put black tie. And then even in the 50s and the 60s, it was the jet set. And you'd have to dress up like you're saying.
Right.
And now you go on Southwest and it's a free-for-all, right? People wearing thongs or
I swear one time, Garrett, I was on a plane. It was an overseas flight. We were going to South America, and I was falling, and I thought I heard, all of a sudden people start walking in with dogs and cats and stuff. Now you can bring, my daughter brought a dog on a plane one time. So now, it's, you can get all kinds of things in there. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's ridiculous.
Not just people anymore, even on the airplanes. You can, bring your pet so it doesn't get lonely. You don't get lonely on an airplane.
Yeah. So one day, people will be getting on spaceships to go into space, bringing their pets, and they're like their subway sub that they just got in the lobby, and it's gonna happen. It's gonna get there. But in the beginning, yes, it's rich people, and but look, it's the beginning, and I really hope and I think that in our lifetimes we'll see the prices come way down, and there'll be a lot more opportunities for everybody to go.
Yeah, I think they're gonna run out of millionaires, and I don't think every millionaire wants to do this either. There's some of them that are like, nah, not for me. So I think they're eventually going to run out of millionaires, and they realize the price has to come down, so it's more affordable, more like an expensive vacation, let's say, than than this price that they're dealing with now.
Yeah, it's totally fair. I think we will absolutely reach a day when I can go on there and really just complain about the flight service and give it a very bad review on Yelp. You're gonna wind up just completely just like, oh yeah, this is a horrible. You'd be like, oh, I had the worst stay. What happened? Oh, we only reached low Earth orbit for a little bit, and it was a bumpy ride.
Yeah.
So it's gonna happen. So let me go. Do you guys want to go? What else do you guys want to talk about before we hit questions?
Yeah, I think we had a couple things. One, as far as these folks, but with these folks being astronauts, do you agree that they are astronauts, Garrett? Because that was some of it. They're getting astronaut wings and so on. And, you're above the 50-mile boundary. What do you think about that?
Look, I want this to succeed. It's good that there's a thriving space tourism thing. So I want to help them out and make these people that are paying all this money feel good. But no. What are you kidding me? Look, when you fly on Southwest, right, and you're in seat like 27C, and you get off of that thing, are you a pilot? Do they like give you a little pilot's wings and a certificate from the FAA that you're now a commercial? No, you're a passenger, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. You have a good flight, hopefully, and you have a good view out the window. It's great. There's nothing wrong with that, but no. What do you think?
I think I think it depends on what we think is an astronaut. Because what we used to think of an astronaut is Neil Armstrong walking on the moon, and because only NASA or government astronauts could do that. And if you wanted to fly in space, even if you were one of the, some of our friends who paid money to go, the rich space flight participants who went with the Soyuz, they were kind of doing a job they would launch like we did. They wouldn't do the same responsibilities. But if you're like a payload specialist, like they had some members of Congress fly, they still were sort of like, and they didn't consider themselves to be astronauts, because I think the definition back then when you thought astronaut was someone who worked for NASA or worked for a government and spent years of training to fly in a spaceship. But I don't think they ever anticipated this happening, because there were some of the X-15 pilots back in the day that got astronaut wings for going above 50 miles. I think Joe Engle even was one of them, who, a guy we know who later became an astronaut, a NASA astronaut. So I don't know. I mean, I think now the way it's perceived is, and it's the way the rule was, if you get above the Carmen line, if you get yourself figure it out, even shoot yourself off with a slingshot, figure out some way to get up there, you get the astronaut wings. But I think maybe I don't know, maybe there's different distinctions, like there's NASA astronaut, or there's some professional astronaut versus someone an astronaut who's sitting as a passenger and got themselves to space.
I do think it's a function of what's your role during the flight, and I do. It's marketing. Come on, man, it's marketing, right? If somebody gets to go up and add their name to the list and say that it encourages more people to drop $250,000 on a ticket if you get this shiny little pin, that's from the gift store when you come home. In fact, I think you do have to. Didn't Branson and his crew have to walk through the Virgin gift store after they got off the flight, with all the stuffed animals and the T-shirts, right? I think they did.
Wait, you guys are telling me?
What, you mean you didn't have to do that with NASA?
No.
Look, man, me that I would spend $1,000, $200,000, and they wouldn't give me a stuffed animal for free?
Yeah, I don't know what they get. They got the pin, though, I think. What were we saying, Gary? What did you say to what?
They got the pin. Look, I took a Carnival cruise once, okay? And they didn't call me like a sailor. All right, I didn't get a shirt with the little thing on your shoulders. What are those things called that go on your shoulders here?
I forget. Epaulets or something like that?
Yeah, epaulets. Yeah. Like you're the Love Boat captain or something. I didn't get those when I went on the Carnival cruise. When
you're a kid. When my kids used to, and your kids probably now they're younger. When you go on an airplane, they get little wings from the Delta Airlines captain. I wanted them. Hey, can I have those? And he'd be like, no, they're just for kids. I think it's okay. I think it's probably it's built up momentum, and I think it's the astronaut thing is I guess the way I feel about it. That's great. They made it there. Whoever they did it, you figure out a way to get above 50 miles above our planet. However you did that, you're an astronaut. You've been up there. Just like you're an Earthling. All right, you're down here no matter what your job is, and if you can do that. But maybe I think people will still understand that there's a distinction between a NASA astronaut or even the pilots who are the guys who are flying that spaceship, CJ and our friends up there.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different. So, I think that there's different, there's probably going to be different categories, just like, there's different categories of pilot. Like you're an instructor pilot, right?
Yeah.
Right, Garrett? You've got that. You have a commercial rating too, probably. You've got a lot of ratings, right?
Yeah, I got.
Yeah, so I'm just a private pilot. So, but we're both pilots. But you're more accomplished than I am. You have different. So maybe that's what it is. You're a NASA astronaut, or you're a space station astronaut, or you're a whatever astronaut. But I think in general, I think we're all astronauts. If you can get up there, that's my opinion.
It's a fun thing to talk about, but it really doesn't matter. Yeah.
Right.
And on that fantastic note, I think we should go to questions.
All right.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to start off with all right. This is run from Shane Draz. I know that Garrett works at SpaceX, so I'm interested to hear what it's like working with the engineers and your thoughts on Starship.
Starship. Wow. Well, first of all, I don't work at SpaceX full-time anymore. So I worked there for 7 years, from 2011 to 2018. Still do a little bit of consulting for them on like every once in a while when they have something that I can help with, but it's very limited now. So just want to clear that up. So I'm not speaking for SpaceX or anything like that. I'm just a contractor for them right now. I'm no longer an employee, but I did work there for 7 years. And it's an amazing place, I'll tell you. It was so different in a lot of ways than it was at NASA. One of the biggest ways was decision speed. We would make decisions in like a day, or just a small group of people get together and make a big decision that we would spend like a year on at NASA. And so we would move the speed at which things were happening, which is so much faster. And but it was also very, very intense. You have to. It's not for the faint of heart. If you want to work there, you got to be ready to work really, really hard. I mean, it's a very demanding and intense place to be, but it's also super exciting. And Starship's gonna be awesome. I can't wait to see that super heavy fly. And when we talk about reducing the price for people going to space, the key is affordable reusability. And that's really, this with the Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy being able to reuse the rocket. We had reusability with Space Shuttle. We used most of it again, but it was never really that affordable because in between flights, there was this army of people that had to do a tremendous amount of maintenance on the thing, and it was still very expensive. In fact, certain components like the solid rocket boosters, it would have been cheaper to make new ones every single time than to refurbish them like we did. But what's happening now, SpaceX and others are, and also Blue Origin and Virgin, they're not throwing these rockets. The space plane that Branson flew, they got that back. They're gonna use it again. So Starship kind of takes that to the extreme where the whole thing is reusable, not just a portion of it. And you can fly a ton of people on that thing. It's huge. And now when you divide the cost of the fuel by all the people you could put into Starship, the price could get reasonable. So that's what I mean about the price coming down. And I think Starship's kind of key to that.
Awesome answer to that question. And let me get one over here from Maz. Maz, I'm putting you on the spot, sadly, buddy. So one question is that so Garrett worked for SpaceX, and now we have between SpaceX, Blue Origin, and Virgin Galactic, which were your favorites? Which one do you have a more of a preference towards?
Well, that's a great question. I think, and that's one of the things that we wanted to touch on and set up a little bit because we have, as I think one of us mentioned, I think Garrett mentioned that Jeff Bezos is headed to space, hopefully in less than a week on the 20th, and so there's some differences between the two. So maybe we should talk a little bit about that. I kind of like them all. I think they're all different enough and distinct enough that there's room for all of them. SpaceX, though, is getting right now the SpaceX Falcon that Garrett helped develop is getting people to the space station, getting NASA astronauts, and also Thomas from the French astronaut from the ESA astronaut, and our friend Aki is up there as well, and they all got there with Megan and Shane on the SpaceX Falcon. So that, SpaceX is able to go to orbit. They've been going to orbit with cargo, and now they've been taking astronauts. There's a third trip they just had with astronauts going up there, and they're going to have another flight coming up shortly. So that's one function. And Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson right now is still doing suborbital flights. So Branson's lands on a runway. And Gary, maybe we talk a little bit about this. Let's because SpaceX I kind of have in a different category because they're going to ISS and they've been they're going to orbit 17,500 miles an hour. I kind of think of that's a whole different model where the Virgin and the Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin, they're going to suborbital flights, but they're still very different. They're different from going to the orbit, but Richard Branson, his takes off from a runway, right? So, and he lands on a runway. So one thing that one advantage here is you can go to different inclinations, right? When you launch from a launch pad, from a stationary launch pad, there's only certain inclinations you can get. But if you can pack up and go to different places fairly easily, you don't need a launch pad everywhere you go. When you have Richard Branson's model, you just need a runway, and you can maybe land at a different runway when you come back, right? So there's, I think that there may be some implications for future air travel going from really space travel from one. I don't know if they're going to be doing that, but that's one possibility. Jeff Bezos is more automated, right? It doesn't have a pilot in there flying the thing. It's more of going up. It's kind of like I don't know if I'd go as far to say like an amusement park ride, but there's no pilot on there, from what I understand. It's just all automated system. There's emergency systems that'll take over, playing a role that a pilot might, but it's also pretty straightforward and fairly simple in that it doesn't require a runway, right? So I think those are two of the major differences between the Bezos and the Branson model. And I think that there's room for both of those as far as whether it's tourists or experiments. And Jeff Bezos with Blue Origin, they're hoping to continue going. The next step would be to orbit with the New Glenn spacecraft. And just I'll let Garrett chime in here, but with Jeff Bezos, it's New Shepard is what he calls this suborbital program, and he is very much a fan of the space program from way back as a little kid. And he doesn't. I don't think he's old enough to. I think he's between our ages actually. I think he's a little younger than me, maybe a little older than you, Garrett. But he remembers the Apollo 11 for sure. And that the Alan Shepard, the first American in space, he's doing a suborbital flight that is similar to that. And then when he goes to an orbital flight, it'll be New Glenn, which is named after John Glenn. But anyway, so to answer that question, I don't really have a favorite. I think they all have a purpose, and there's room for all of them. What do you think, Eric?
Matt, I think we should maybe take a step back because a lot of our subscribers, and by the way, if you haven't subscribed yet,
yes, now please, before you hang up on us,
because don't listen anymore to us. Yes. We'd rather you hang up and go subscribe. That's more important.
Correct.
But anyway.
And subscribe and like are more important than listening. Yes,
it's
that's correct.
That the audience knows that for just 4 likes a month, you can support 2 astronauts and their.
So, but so a lot of our subscribers and a lot of you listening right now are rocket scientists and get all this. But we also have people listening like my mom. Okay, so I think we should take a step back and explain the suborbital and orbital difference because it's a big difference. It's really important.
Good job. Go.
So suborbital means you're going straight up and straight down. So if you see this little earbuds thing I got here, like that, that's a suborbital trajectory. Okay, it went straight up and it fell straight down. Okay, the only difference for Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin is it goes higher, but otherwise it's the same thing as this. Okay, so and you can go and people think that rockets when you see rockets like the Saturn V going off to the moon or the space shuttle launching, they think the rockets go straight up because they do in the beginning, but only for a short period of time, and it's just to get out of the thick air. Because if you go straight up, you're gonna come straight down. And it's not going to last very long, okay? It'll be like 15 minutes. On the other hand, if you want to go around the Earth and stay up in space, you don't have to go straight up. You got to fly almost like an airplane. You got to build up speed horizontally. So you take off straight up, but almost immediately you start pitching over and going this way because what you want to do is build up so much speed that you balance out the force of gravity, which is pulling you back down, with the centrifugal force of your speed, your velocity going around the Earth that wants to fling you out, okay? And then when those two things get in balance, you're in orbit. And that requires going really, really fast. You have to go like 17,500 miles an hour, like Matt said. Now, you only have to go a little bit over around 4,000 miles an hour when you're going, if you want to get going so fast that you go straight up and you reach a high altitude like Branson did at about 50 miles, a little over 50 miles or 100 kilometers like Blue Origin will. If you want to hit that speed, you got to get going like about 4,000 miles per hour. So it's like, if I want to go orbital, I just got to go 4 times as fast. That's really hard. It's really hard to go 4 times as fast because energy. All right, now we're going to get for the rocket scientists out there that are listening. Energy goes as velocity squared. Kinetic energy is 1/2 mass times v squared. So what it means is if you go 4 times as fast, you require 16 times the square. So 4 squared is 16. It requires 16 times the energy, which means and for my mom, it means you need a much bigger rocket to go orbital. It was a much more difficult thing to do. Okay, so when you see SpaceX sending people around the Earth and they're staying up there for days, not just the 7 minutes that Branson was up there, just understand that the engineering difficulty is a complete different ballgame, and that's why instead of a couple $100,000, it costs tens of millions of dollars because it's much harder to do. Whew.
That was good.
That was in depth.
So what's your favorite, Garrett?
SpaceX. I still have stock.
What about Blue Origin versus Virgin Galactic? Do you have a favorite there?
That's a good question because that's more apples to apples. Because as I mentioned, they're both suborbital. So in one sense, in the most important sense, they're kind of the same, right? It's kind of the same thing, but they go about it in completely different ways. They both last about 10 to 15 minutes. They both go straight up and come straight down. But one is a rocket that's fully automated and goes a little bit higher. The other is a space plane, the Virgin Galactic space plane that has two pilots sitting in front that are manually flying it, and it has a completely different way of coming back down. There's no parachute, it lands on the runway.
The mothership as well, and it's a longer flight. I mean, that flight, your time in space is probably the same, a few minutes, or the amount of weightlessness you have time-wise. But their flight, I think, the takeoff to landing is more like over an hour, I think, isn't it? By the time you take off, get dropped, and come back. But the time in space is pretty comparable. A little bit higher with Blue Origin, but yeah. I'm sorry. Keep going. Higher,
and they really, there was they made such a big. They were getting into fights on Twitter about this. Whether if it's 80 kilometers or 100 kilometers.
Yeah,
where does space begin? But it's stupid. It was a stupid argument. But you know what it is when you get a bunch of really rich people with big egos, and they build these ships that are very phallic. You got to have a pissing contest, right? It's just going to happen. So who cares? 80 kilometers, 100 kilometers, it looks kind of the same. And
I think the whole thing with that, what? Is that Jason?
It winds up becoming a very expensive dick pic to send to everybody.
Yeah. But the Carmen Line actually, I think, is
Jason. PG-13.
The Carmen Line is around what is it, 80 kilometers or 52 miles or 6? I mean, it's
Carmen Line. So that's interesting.
It's the actual line. I think it's just that like 80 kilometers or 50 miles. What's that? No. Wait a minute. No, because I think they rounded up. I think the European standard rounded up to 100 kilometers, and the American standard rounded down to 50 miles. Because I think the actual line where there really is no more air, right? Where there's the aerodynamics of an airplane will not work. Your control surfaces will not work. You are in space. You don't have atmosphere. That line is, I think, somewhere in between the two, where it's like 80 kilometers or 50, a little. So I think it was the Americans rounded down to 50, and the Europeans rounded up to 100 kilometers. So that was, I think that's all it was.
So a couple. One very important thing is there is no actual line. You don't actually at the window see a line as you go. It's not like the Lincoln Tunnel when you see the New York, New Jersey, right?
Yeah, you see that now with Waze. That's helpful. The bridge.
The bridge.
The bridge. It's amazing that both ends of that bridge is still well maintained. Because you figure someone's going to have a bad year and the taxes up, but yeah, they keep it. They keep the bridge. Even half of it's in New York, half is New Jersey. They keep it going. Go ahead.
So there's no point at which the atmosphere suddenly stops. It's not discrete. It gradually gets thinner and thinner and thinner. And after about 80 kilometers, it gets thinner faster, right? It really falls off much more quickly. So 80 kilometers is really kind of, if you're using a physics-based approach, so that 80 kilometers. Science. Jonathan McDowell, who's a really smart astrophysicist, I read something he wrote recently this week about this whole issue. And he said that Carmen originally proposed more like 80 kilometers because he was using a physics-based approach. And great Caltech professor, by the way, Theodore von Karman.
Did you go to Caltech, by the way?
Yeah,
why you mentioned that? Let's not get into that. It's pretty nice that you mentioned. I just want to tell people you went to that school where this dude was teaching. That's pretty good.
Thank you.
I went to MIT, but whatever. Go ahead. And Columbia. Just stick to the point. What were you saying? Come on. Right. It's a good plug for your school. I'm trying to plug your school for crying out loud. That's all.
MIT is nice too.
Thank you. But go ahead. So Carmen from Caltech came up with the 80 kilometers.
He really was
Garrett,
thinking about 80.
You froze on me. You still there?
I'm still here. Can you got me?
Jason, are you still there?
Yeah, everyone's still here, and I went to a community college, by the way.
I think Mass can't hear us though.
Mouse,
I think we lost.
Mouse, you there?
I lost you guys. Did you get?
No, we got
lost?
We're back together.
All right. Okay.
All right.
All right.
So
I don't know what went out there. Yeah.
I was just saying that, like, so Carmen originally said like 80,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody said, well, people will remember it easier if it's a nice round number. Let's make it 100. And since there's really no particular line, there's no so they say, okay, 100's fine. But you know what? This whole thing, I think the Russians have a better way of doing this.
Oh, this is interesting. Tell us.
They say that actually when you become an astronaut, is not when, or cosmonaut, I should say, is not when you reach a certain altitude, but it's when you reach a certain velocity.
Which
makes sense.
What is this velocity?
I think they had a specific number, but it's basically when you reach a certain velocity, which enables you to have a stable orbit. So it'll be a function of the altitude, So the lower you are, the faster you have to go. But when you're in a stable orbit and you've achieved orbit of the Earth, then it's real. And this little straight up, straight down, because they were poo-pooing Alan Shepard. They're like, yeah, whatever.
That's all that is.
Our guy
been going on for years now. I didn't realize that. So going back, the first human in space was Yuri Gagarin, and he did an orbital flight. He went into orbit, right? And then the Americans countered with Alan Shepard. So that's what this thing's been going on for decades. This fight. And now these guys are just, you did. I went to space and you didn't. Now we're only turning a couple miles. Right? That's what it is, Garrett. Is that what it is? That's got to be it, because the Russians put a guy in orbit, and that's why they're saying at speed. The Americans put a guy in suborbital, got him into above how high he went.
We count that.
And now we count that. This has been going on for a long time.
I was over in Russia, and they had this big poster of all the people that have been to space.
And
I noticed, number one, Yuri Gagarin, of course. And then I looked at the poster, and I see the first American on there is John Glenn. I'm like, what about Alan Shepard? It doesn't count. He didn't go fast.
I wonder what they're saying over there with this Richard Branson thing then.
Oh, he's not on the poster. There's no way he's on the poster. Unless he buys, unless we give some money to them, and then they'll put him on the poster.
Some money. Yeah, oh, that is fun. I never knew that, Garrett. That's amazing. I never realized that. Wow, that's pretty interesting, because that makes sense, right? People are, oh, this is space, it's not space. But if we stick with the atmosphere question, right, the line of it not being a velocity but a line, because they probably didn't count all of our X-15 guys that got there too back in the early '60s, right? So if you count it as a line as opposed to a speed, where were we with your Carmen story? Because he was saying he came out with 80 kilometers, which is.
But the Carmen Line, as it was publicized and as it became known, was 100 kilometers. Because they said, it's just easier to have a nice round number.
If you round it up. But if you use miles, you could round down. Right? If you use miles, 50 is.
If you round it down to 50, because 50 miles, that's about 80 kilometers. So, yeah. So that's 50 is a nice round number too. So maybe that's why. But the thing is, when you're on the space station, right? We're up there. We're about 200 miles up. Okay, so
200 nautical. 200 nautical, I think, Garrett. Don't cheat yourself.
Nautical.
Yeah, so 250 statute.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we're we're 5 times greater than these lines that we're talking about.
Right.
And you still have some atmosphere. You still have to reboost the space station every once in a while, or it's going to fall down, because you're still not completely out of the atmosphere, even at that height. So where you draw this line is completely arbitrary.
Right. Well, at Hubble, I hate to say this because this could but at Hubble we were 100 miles higher. We were at 350, and we said, so we were who's higher and everything. So Garrett, I spoke to John Young about this, and I said, John, maybe we should redraw the boundaries of space, and we can make it at 300 miles, and then it would just be, it would be Hubble and the guys that went to the moon. And he was all for it. He said, yeah, we'd get rid of a lot of astronauts that way. That wouldn't. But what do you think of that proposal?
He won't like Richard Branson will hate that.
No, I think that, people have been. I think, I don't know. I think whatever. I think 50 miles or So 100 kilometers is 62 miles. That's not really, I don't know. It's not that. And I think Virgin Galactic eventually will get there. I think they just need to get a little more juice on their rocket, and they'll be up there.
How do you feel about another few questions? How do you guys feel about that?
Okay, let's take more questions.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll try to give shorter answers.
All right, shorter answers.
That's not going to work.
Alex Tapia just said CCCP. So he's talking about China. All right. So China's sending off people into their space station and stuff like that. So what's your guys' takes on that?
Those aren't real astronauts.
And we're live.
How high did they go?
We should have stopped while we were ahead. This space station certainly is above everybody's line, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Way above.
Yeah. So
yeah. That's great. I think the more nations and companies, the more people that go to space, and the more we travel in space, the better. And I'm up for anybody that wants to use it for peaceful purposes. I think it's great. Go for it. Yeah.
All right. So
yeah, I think so. I think again, no, absolutely. It is not even a question. I think they're certainly what they've done going up to their space station, and there are 3 countries that have been able to send people to space so far. Right? We've had, with their own rockets. That is, the United States and Russia and China is the 3rd player. So certainly for governments, for private companies now we have SpaceX. Yeah. Right. Even though they did it with NASA, they kind of did it. That's a whole nother topic. But they're able to send people who aren't NASA astronauts up there too. They're going to do that flight you mentioned. And what was it again? I'm sorry, the Inspiration flight. And then and now we have Virgin Galactic with a suborbital flight, which still counts. And
hopefully in about a week we'll have a third one.
In a week we'll have another one. So yeah, absolutely. I think, and it's great. I think, as Garrett said, I think having the more countries involved, more people involved, more ways to get there is a good thing. And I think that's what we all agree on. All these other things about making money or who's up and who's an astronaut, I think the main thing is you want to get as many people up there to experience this as possible, and people talking about it is a good thing. And as far as with other countries, I would like to see us cooperate with all countries. One of the biggest advantages of the space program that we've had at NASA is that we work with lots of other countries, and no matter who they are, you might disagree at the tops of those countries. The leadership, let's say, they have other issues to worry about, but as astronauts, scientists, engineers, we can agree on achieving these goals together. So we work very well with. Garrett's been talking to a lot of throughout the podcast, his experience over there in Russia, and we've all worked with international astronauts. It didn't make a difference. We're from different countries. We're all on the same team. So I think maybe if our countries could work together with countries like China, who is sending people to space, I think that would be a big plus as well. Even though we have differences in other areas, so we can agree on exploring space, I would think.
Now, if they build a moon base, okay, and they stick nuclear weapons on it, then we got a problem. Don't do that. Yeah, as long as you come in peace.
Seriously. All right, so I got one big question. All right, this is for both of you guys. One is from Krishna Gatol. One is, hey, Mass, how was your experience at the Big Bang Theory set with Fruit Loops? Love from India. And the other one is for Garrett. Mr. Tiltowhirl asks, is Garrett continuing consulting for Apple TVs for All Mankind Season 3? And I'm a sucker for TV, so I'm asking these questions.
All right.
You want to take that?
The Big Bang Theory was. What was? Do you want to know if it was fun? Is that what it was? Fun. It was great.
Was it fun? Was your experience on the set?
No, it's fantastic. It was a whole new world, and Garrett's been part of that as well over with other TV shows. The Big Bang Theory was really just a great experience. I kind of fell into it. NASA wanted one of their astronauts. The Big Bang Theory wanted to send a guy to space, and they wanted to speak to an astronaut to give him some ideas. And so I went out there and met with the writers and the creators of the show, Chuck Lorre and Bill Prady, and had a great time talking to them, helped them with a script, and went to see a taping. And then a few months later, they asked me to come on the show, and I was like, sure. And I told them I wasn't an actor. I'm not really an actor. And they said, okay, That's okay. You've been you for a long time. Just do that. Just be you, and that's what I did. So I didn't have to act. I went on and did myself. Was playing myself. So no, it was great. I think it was very much like a space mission almost, in that everyone has a role, and I think the actors are kind of like the astronauts, and the director is kind of like the flight director, and Chuck Lorre and Bill Prady, the executive producers, are kind of like the heads of the Space Center or something like that, kind of keeping it all. And everyone has a role, and everyone helps. And it's a lot of teamwork. And with the people involved with that show, it was just such a pleasure. And they made me feel so much at home. And I still communicate with a lot of people, from the wardrobe people to Bill and to Bill Prady, to the writers, and to the actors as well. So it was such a really fun experience. And they enjoyed having an astronaut around too for a while. So yeah, it was all good, and like I said, I'm still friends with a lot of them, and so it was a lifelong benefit through the friendships I made. So that was great. Yeah, and a great show. A lot of positive messages, I think, and funny and very successful. So it was a blast. Garrett, your turn.
No, you were great on that, by the way, Mass. I really enjoyed.
Oh, thanks. I was just being me. You know what's funny? I'll just add this one thing, because they were saying you should try to do some more acting. And I said, I can only be me. And they go, well, you could be you in a lot of different roles. I go, what roles? And they started saying, I could be a cop. Listen to this. I could be a cop. I could be a judge. They left off, I could be a gangster. I didn't want to go there. I didn't ask. But they said you could be a cop. You could be a judge. Stuff like that. We'll see.
I don't know. I don't know. The cop. That's not you. I don't
know. Maybe they were just being nice. Yeah, being a cop.
As one of the cops that lets you off of a speeding ticket.
Yeah,
that's a really
nice cop. Slow it down there, Buster.
You're definitely a good cop, not the bad cop.
Yeah, I'd be the bad. You be the bad cop. You and I can be good cop, bad cop. You be the bad cop. Go ahead, Garrett.
There's a lot of so For All Mankind on Apple TV, co-created by Ron Moore, Ben Navidi, and Matt Walpert, is a great show, and you should all tune in and watch it. It's awesome. And I'm looking at the clock here. I realize we're over time already, so I'm not. So this really is a whole nother episode of Two Funny Astronauts. Yeah, we really go deeper.
Why don't we do that too? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So I'll keep this short. We should really go a lot deeper into our experiences in Hollywood. Matt and I both have a lot of fun, and late night TV with Craig Ferguson and Letterman. You're on Letterman, right? And I was on Colbert, and we could talk about. There's a lot of fun things to talk about there. But let me suffice it that just to answer the guy's question. I'm still working. I'm the technical consultant on For All Mankind. We're working on season 3 right now. Season 1 and 2 are available streaming right now on Apple TV. We're deep into season 3. We filmed more than half of the season 3 episodes, and actually just today, before we did this event, I looked at a Studio Network cut of episode 301, the first episode of season 3. And started preparing my notes on that. So yes, I'm still very involved in season 3. If you like season 1 and 2, you're really gonna like season 3. It's actually so far it's absolutely awesome. So check it out.
Cool.
So on that note, I think we're gonna start to wrap everything up. If you guys want to go send everything off, and then I'll end the broadcast.
All right. Yeah. No. Well, thanks. Garrett, go ahead. What do you got?
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe, and thanks for participating. I think we have some ideas, maybe for some future episodes, talking more about international cooperation and certainly our experiences in Hollywood with The Big Bang Theory and these other programs, For All Mankind and so on. We can talk about that because that's a whole new world that both of us entered as astronauts, which is kind of cool, So yeah, we'd love to share more of that too. So thanks very much for listening, folks. And like Garrett said, like and subscribe, please. We'd appreciate it.